much going on in this. So many different controls. I don't know where they were.
All right, links are live, and Steve, you're set to begin at the top of the hour. Or I guess at 1:30.
That would be the bottom of the hour. Good afternoon, everybody. I will call the ICRC Commission meeting to order. As chair of the commission, this is a Zoom webinar and is being live streamed to YouTube. For anyone in the public watching who would prefer to watch via a different platform than they are currently using, please visit our social media at Redistricting MI to find a link for viewing on other platforms. Our live stream today includes closed captioning. We have ASL interpretation available for this meeting. If you are a member of the public watching who would like easier viewing options for the ASL interpreter on your screen, please email us at redistricting@michigan.gov and we will provide you with additional viewing options. Similarly, members of the public who would like to access translation services during the webinar can email us at redistricting@michigan.gov for details on how to access language translation services available for this meeting. Translation services are available for both Spanish and Arabic. Please email us and we will provide you with a unique link and call-in information. This meeting is being recorded and will be available at redistrictingmichigan.org for viewing at a later date. meeting is also being transcribed, and those transcriptions will be made available and posted on redistrictingmichigan.org, along with written public comment submissions. Members of the media who may have questions before, during, or after the meeting should direct those questions to Anita Kirsnowski, Press Secretary at the Department of State. Members of the media should have her contact information. For purposes of the public watching and the public record, I will turn to the Department of State staff to take note of the commissioner's presence. Could we have a roll call, please?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Please unmute yourself and say present when I call your name. I'm gonna change things up a bit this time and go in alphabetical order by last name instead of first name. So first, Douglas Clark.
Present.
Juanita Curry.
Present.
Anthony Eade.
Present.
Brittany Kellum.
Present.
Rhonda Lang.
Present.
Steve Lett.
Present.
Cynthia Orton.
Present.
MC Rothhorn.
Present.
Rebecca Zatella.
Present.
Janice Villette.
Present.
Aaron Wagner.
Present.
Richard Weiss. Don't think we have Richard yet. And Dustin Witches.
Present.
Thank you.
Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I would also note that we have our executive director, Sue Ann Hammersmith, present with us today. Good afternoon, Sue Ann. The agenda was mailed out earlier, and in looking that over, are there any additions that we need to make or any corrections? MC.
Under new business, I'd like to suggest that we talk about the close-up. That is a January 27th Zoom, and I just want to see if we need to talk about that at all. It was in the, an email that was sent to us, and there was it's an educational opportunity around communities of interest. That close-up.
Okay, wouldn't that fall under schedule and agenda for January meetings?
It could. That's okay. I'm okay with that.
Okay, don't let us forget it.
Okay.
Anybody else? We did get a letter from ESRI, ESRI letter regarding what I assume to be mapping work. I think that I would like to put that in as A1 and at least acknowledge it and maybe discuss a little bit of it. So if you would add that, please. Other than that, if you would approve the agenda as presented and amended, raise your hand. Okay. Next would be the review of the minutes. They came out and I believe I do not have any corrections. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions to be made on the minutes from the last meeting? Sue Ann.
Under new business 1, the second motion, the second line of that just needs corrected. It should be interview the 7 candidates for communications and outreach. So change the of to a for and add an and between communications and outreach director in that line.
Okay. Any other corrections? Okay, if you would approve the minutes as corrected, raise your hand. Okay. We have no public comment today, I am informed. However, Just a few notes on public comment for those that are watching and who would like to make public comment in the future. Because this is a virtual meeting, members of the public have to sign up in advance to address us. Staff at the Department of State, when this is used, will unmute each member of the public for up to 90 seconds on a first come, first served basis. This means that members of the public will be called on in the order in which they signed up to address the commission. For those members of the public participating in public comment, please note if you do, that you will have no more than 90 seconds to address the commission on those days when there is public comment. If you would like to submit your thoughts to the commission or participate in public comment in an upcoming session of the commission, you can email the office at redistricting@michigan.gov, and we will provide you with the written thoughts to the commission. Public comment sign-up links are also posted at Redistricting Michigan social media pages on Facebook and Twitter at RedistrictingMI. Now we have something new, Executive Director updates. Sue Ann.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's been a busy 3 weeks on the job since we last met, and I have a list of 7 items to share, but I will be brief today. First of all, thank you to Commissioners Aaron Wagner and MC Rothhorn, who worked out the details of the general legal counsel hiring. We are presenting an offer letter and an employment contract for Julianne Pestula to be offered that general counsel position when we talk about that later today. If approved, Julianne will officially start on Monday. After the details of the offer were worked out, Julianne and I have met twice, and she's been volunteering. As an example, she provided the format for the resolutions on our agenda today and a checklist for recording the roll call votes, or the roll call, which Sally just took. Second, at the request of the commission, I created interview questions and a rubric, and then pre-screened 7 candidates for the communications and outreach position. Thanks to Commissioners Juanita Curry, Cynthia Orton, and Janice Villette for handling that initial assessment that got the list down to 7 candidates. I have provided a report, which I hope you have had time to review, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about any of the candidates. Third, I've been approving the pay and any expense reimbursement for the commissioners each week, while Commissioner Steve Lett, our chair, has been approving mine. In an effort to clarify who has authority for payment of expenses, a policy is being presented to the commission for your review today. My goal is to assist you as much as possible in taking care of the day-to-day operations, while also being transparent and accountable and reporting that financial data to you. But I want to make sure that the commissioners feel very comfortable with where they are and in making sure that everything is transparent and accountable that this commission does. 4, I'm presenting a staff organizational chart today. There's been some initial conversation about commission employees and who reports to whom, and I would like to continue that discussion, keeping in mind that we're all on the same team and we all work toward the same mission. 5, Sally Marsh, Sarah Reinhardt, and Mike Brady from the Michigan Department of State have been wonderful resources and have assisted me greatly in my first month of employment. So I do want to give a shout out to those 3. I'm grateful to each one of them. Sarah has sent out the letters for the executive director candidates who are not selected. She arranges all these Zoom meetings and does so much more work, a lot of it behind the scenes that you don't see, but she's pretty busy. Mike has provided counsel on legal issues as well as practical issues, such as his suggestion to create resolutions to help assist the person taking the minutes, and then to organize key motions so we don't have to search through minutes to find them at a later time. Sally has been arranging connections, such as linking to communities of interest, assisting with continuing education, and putting the pieces together for consultant RFPs. For example, yesterday we met with Chad Bassett, who is the MDOS Purchasing and Expenditure Manager in the Office of Financial Services. We discussed the RFP process for consultants, and I appreciate Doug Clark for providing an initial draft, which was given to Chad to review. And then he's worked on a draft format for us, which the Department of State can utilize to put that RFP out for bid on behalf of the commission. Sixth, I want to say thanks for the opportunity to work with the commission. Although I'm making recommendations and have provided starter motions through the resolutions on your agenda, you are responsible for making the motions, amendments, and the approvals or not. You make the decisions. So I just want to be clear. I'm not in any way telling you what to do. I'm just providing a framework for us to start with. And hopefully you can take that and run with it then. And 7, I'm impressed with the mutual respect, the civil discussion, even when you disagree, and your acceptance of the majority decisions and your willingness to continue moving forward as a commission. Your work has been intensive and you are making great strides, but with virtual meetings, it is harder to get to know each other and continue to develop positive working relationships. If there is an interest in a brief team building time at our meetings, I will start building this into the agenda. This concludes my report and I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Sue Ann. Any questions for Sue Ann? I have one. Sue Ann and I talked earlier last year, or late last year, I guess, that she had been called by a person in the media for an interview. And she called and asked me, since she was brand new, what to do. And I said, well, don't say anything stupid and go ahead and give the interview. How did you give the interview and how did it go?
I did give the interview. It was with a Grand Rapids online news, and I wasn't even able to see it. So I don't really know how it ended up. The concern is Section 11 of the Constitution, where it says we cannot talk to anybody except in a public meeting about redistricting matters. And Rebecca, in fact, asked the same question of Mike Brady this week. He did provide some counsel in that area, which we appreciate. I think all the commissioners probably need to be on board with talking points and guidelines if the media does contact you, and either Julie and or communications and outreach person will begin working on that immediately. So we have a clear sense of what we can do and what we cannot do and what those talking points should be. So we're all speaking in one voice.
Very good. I think it's important that when we get requests like these, that we honor them. I mean, one of the conditions, or one of the things we're trying to accomplish, is to locate and talk with communities of interest. And so it would probably be nice if they knew we were here. I'm certain that everybody remembers the amendment that they voted for in detail and are watching with rapt attention every meeting we have, but we probably could use some more publicity. Thank you.
I think Anthony had a question.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
And Rebecca too.
Anthony.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I really like the idea of having some sort of team building or icebreaker type thing built into the agenda, especially since we have virtual meetings.
Rebecca.
Yeah, so I did get a request this week from PBS Detroit to do an interview, and I did follow up with Mike about what we can and cannot say, and did actually do that interview yesterday, and it's actually supposed to air tonight at 7:30. But PBS was very cognizant of what the constitutional requirements are as well, and so before we even had that interview, I had a discussion with the reporter about what we were allowed to talk about and what we weren't allowed to talk about, and he was very respectful of that. So hopefully I didn't embarrass myself in my interview, and hopefully I did well. So, but mostly he focused on why I wanted to be on the commission and, how I felt when I was picked. So he kept it very neutral.
And I also interviewed with him, and I literally read the part out of the Constitution before we started. I said, before we start this, I want to read this to you so you are very clear what I can talk about and what I cannot talk about. And if I can't talk about it, I'm going to tell you in the interview, I'm sorry, this is something that we only discuss in open meetings or in a public hearing.
That's good to know, because they reached out to me, but I hadn't responded yet.
Well, they reached out to me right after the selection process. I mean, like within days. I've spoken about this before, and it was up in Traverse City. They interviewed me, and the person is probably 10 or 15 minute interview. And when I watched it on the local TV, I was on for 5 seconds. So I didn't have a chance to say anything stupid. So I see Richard has joined us. Welcome, Richard.
Welcome. I'm on the phone. That's at the moment, so I'm still playing around here.
Well, you're looking really good.
Well, that's good. That's the best part.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else for Sue? Sounds like we're getting some calls. We're getting some calls for interviews. So just beware of what we can and can't say. It's not that hard. Secretary of State update, administrative. Sally, are you doing that?
Hi, everybody. Yes, and I'll be super brief. I think moving forward, the Department of State will have less and less to say, and that's a good thing. So just wanted to mostly provide an update to you all on your computers. I've been trying to work through with our team this week and with Sue as well. There's a statewide, there seems to be a sort of statewide delay with Dell laptop computers. Supply chain issues related to the pandemic are essentially at root for that, the cause for that. So we're troubleshooting through a couple of different options, and our colleagues at DTMB are working with us to procure what we can as fast as we can. And we've really been pressing upon everyone, and everyone's aware of the tight timeline you all have. And, if you don't get computers until March or April, you won't have very much time to use them. So we think we have about 10 that we can get, we can get into everyone's possession as soon as possible. Obviously, that's not enough for all of you. That's not enough for all of your staff. I might suggest that you prioritize Sue and Julianne getting those computers. She's been a real champ, but the sort of technical difficulties that you've all experienced, which are for security reasons, I think I would just advocate it'd be great for her to have that. So something to put on your radar. Like I said, we're working through it as we speak to try to figure out how to get it to all of you. So it's not for lack of trying, but it's mostly due to factors well beyond our control. So that's one technical piece. Another technical piece that I know some of you experienced, at least today, was your passwords expiring for your email accounts. And so I think some or all of you will start to experience that in the next couple of days. This happens routinely in state government. Passwords expire and force you to update it for security reasons. That said, because you all don't have, you're not within the state network, it'll be a little trickier for all of you to update it. So if that has happened to you already, you'll need to contact the DTMB, the Department of Technology Management and Budget Client Service Center line. If you don't have that number, you can just feel free to text me. I'll text it to you. And they can help you troubleshoot your individual situation. I'll also ask and see if there's anything those of you whose passwords haven't yet expired can do proactively from outside of the state network. But it might just be a little clunky. So a heads up on that, because you all are yet again unique in the state ecosystem, and we want to make sure that everything's secure, but that also that you're getting access to your emails. So that's what I got. Any questions on that?
I have a question, I guess, on the computers.
Yeah.
If we, since we have 10, obviously, if your computer's working, which mine's been working fine with this whole process, so I certainly would not be standing first in line to get one. Do you know, or does management budget know, have any idea, or technique, or the IT people know if our computers will work with mapping?
So
I assume they
great
will.
question. Yeah. I don't know the offhand answer. I can certainly ask. And the other thing to know is that my understanding of most mapping software or interfaces is that, you know, the kind of intensity of software and hardware that your mapping consultants will need will be much more than what you all would need in order to look at and evaluate the map yourself. And, you know, you all have seen the sort of publicly available versions of mapping software that don't take a lot for your computer to be able to run. So I'm guessing that won't be a huge problem, but, you know, the thing to remember there, and the reason, you know, that we've talked about before, where, you know, we're still trying really hard to push to find the computers for you within the state network, is for A, security reasons, of course, but then, you know, B, as well, the retention of documents and data that will be so important for all of you, and the legal challenges ahead. So, so I wouldn't advise, I see where you're going with that, I think, but I would just say it shouldn't be a short-term issue, but it's I think a long-term, potentially a longer-term issue.
All right, keep us posted, Sally. Thank you. Anything else?
I will. We're working on it.
Okay. Next up, a general counsel hiring next steps. And I received some information. Well, I'll turn it back to the letter was signed by Aaron. Aaron?
MC, do you want to field this, since I was not? I had a family emergency the last day and could not participate, so.
Yeah. So so I can take it. I think are there questions? Otherwise, we have that resolution that that has been presented, or that we'd like to resolve. But I want to ask if there's any. I mean, are there?
Okay. Specifically, any questions on the letter by anybody? Doug.
Yeah, has Julianne signed the letter and returned it?
I believe.
No, it hadn't been sent yet.
Oh, it hasn't even been sent.
No, yeah, because we were seeking permission. So I think that's where the resolution is.
Yeah,
right? We want to basically say, yep, this is the offer that the commission wants to extend to Julianne for her to sign, with the dates of starting, etc.
I was referring to the initial letter.
So she's been engaged in negotiations, like Sue said, so she's been volunteering already. So I think I would consider that a signature, if that's what you're asking.
There were two when we hired Sue. There were two letters. One initially was it explained what we were offering, but it wasn't a commitment until we brought it back to the commission. And she signed that and sent that back to me. And then when we approved it, we sent the formal contract letter to her for signature.
Okay, then I believe, yeah, go ahead, Sue.
I think part of the issue was the timing was very different for me because we didn't even have a draft contract. But I believe the commission still approved the offer before a letter was sent. And that's what we were waiting on, was for the commission to approve these conditions of the employment before the letter was sent. And then our intention is to just provide the letter and the contract all at once. And Julianne is on board. She and I have been meeting, and she's been volunteering, and there's no reason she will not accept this.
Rhonda.
Just a quick question. What's Westlaw or Nexus Lexus as far as reimbursement, just so I know what those are?
They're legal research platforms that have various databases to look through. Primarily for attorneys, you're looking at case law, statute law, etc. But they cover, they cover a wide range of areas. So that's what they are.
Okay.
Yeah, and Lexis and Nexus are both the standard that I've seen used in most legal communities.
Right.
Yeah.
There is the state bar. If you're a member of the state bar, which Julianne is, there's also a database that she can use for free called Casemaker, but it's not as robust, let's put it, as Westlaw or LexisNexis. So we have anything else, MC?
We were very pleased with the negotiations. It went very well. And I think, and I just want to acknowledge that Sue did a great job of also like making sure that the team is coming together. And I think we've seen on the results of, she's already given the update, but I just want to acknowledge that was part of, with regard to Julianne, like making sure that we have that she's part of the team already.
Okay. I would note, unless there's something else from somebody, I would note on the contract, we need to make a couple of changes in paragraph 3.1 rate of pay. We got her beginning on January 1st, 2021 and ending on January 11th and ending on January 11th. That's 366 days. We need to change that to the 10th. That's a year.
Julianne wrote that. I thought about that. It's like, hey, it's her deal. She wanted it put in.
No.
So maybe she's going to work that extra day for free.
Well, maybe. But, let's make it the 10th. And
Okay.
Then the remaining term begins on the 11th, not the 12th. And that makes it internally consistent. So you can kind of give her a jab and say, we're reconsidering since she made that mistake. Just kidding.
I think she was just volunteering. We all win.
Okay. So, MC, you want to make this resolution?
Sure. I would offer that we resolve to have the approve the offer letter dated January 7th, 2021, an employment contract to Julianne Pastula for the Independent Citizens Redistricting Council General Counsel position, which upon her acceptance shall be effective January 11th, 2021.
MC made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Who said that? Brittany?
Yes, I did.
Okay. All in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Any opposed? Same sign. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Who's going to send the letter? Aaron, are you sending this stuff? Who's doing that? You signed it.
I would be the one that would have the contract in my possession. I'd be happy to send the offer letter and the contract, which will need to be amended to Julianne.
All right, very good. That meets with the committee's approval. Okay.
Okay.
Communications and outreach. Next steps. We have some information from Sue Ann. Sue Ann, would you enlighten us, please?
I do. I was given the task of interviewing the 7 candidates that the commission had recommended for the communications and outreach position as being the top 7. When I went through the pre-screening interviews, you can see I asked like 18 questions. We did a rapid fire and I really got a sense of who the people were. And when I finished, 3 candidates had certainly risen to the top. And interestingly enough, when I did their scoring and got all done on different days even, they were all within 1 point of each other. So you have, I think, 3 equally good candidates to choose from an interview, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about these candidates or any of the others.
Who is?
Oops.
I was
Thank
just
you.
going to offer too that they were the letters that we received, their writing samples. They were also the ones that struck me as sort of the most sort of tailored to our region and not, yeah. So I just appreciated that the three were also the writing samples that struck me.
Doug?
Yeah, I just want to bring up the point about Walter Sword again. He's the individual that we added last time. I personally have a concern with him. Same thing we dealt with Amna and James. So same issue.
I do as well. I honestly also, I had an issue with those just being the three. I think honestly there were other candidates that stood out. Like I did some research and made a whole like cheat sheet for each candidate, and I was interested, or it was curious to me that those were the three particularly Mr. Sword. I also want to raise maybe a more challenging question of diversity. And I think it would behoove us to start looking at hiring folks that are representative of not just an area, but the state of Michigan and diverse in their job experience. So those are my thoughts. Quite honestly, I think Walter Sword should be eliminated. And I would prefer to also, if anything, to see an interview with Janet, Edward, Andrea, and Bill.
Rhonda.
I have the same concerns with Mr. Sorg. I did some online footprint on him. Twitter account that wasn't deleted. There was one that was deleted. Some of the things he says, very one-sided political. And my concern is when you're reaching out to communities, you have to have trust. The communities need to trust you. And with some of the things that were said, I myself would have a hard time trusting him, to be honest. And going through the resumes, I just felt that there were other people that would be better equipped, in my opinion. And as far as outreach goes, that would be better at outreaching. I will say for Mr. Freilich, he wasn't on top of my list, but I did like his writing sample that he sent in. That one I did like, but I have to agree with Doug and Brittany on Mr. Sorg. It's way too political for me. I would just to say that out of all the candidates we've had, he's been the most political in his talkings. I looked at the radio or the talk show or podcast or whatever it is that he produces, and it is also very one-sided. And I just, all of the comments that we got from both sides of the aisles, even volunteers from Voters Not Politicians, have said when we do our hiring, they really want us to hire somebody that isn't political. Government work, not necessarily a bad thing, but somebody that isn't overly political because they want to be able to trust them, I'm assuming. We had comments from one that said she didn't pound the pavement getting signatures to pass this proposal, to have it put in the hands of somebody who's political. Not only that, but in 2012, he also ran for House of Representatives. So, I mean, you can't get much more political, I don't think. And so I personally would vote against having Mr. Sorg move on. Thank you.
Well, I guess I have a question then, and I understand your sentiments and your feelings about political, but Walter Sorg was one of the movers and shakers to get this amendment passed. And let's face it, folks, this is a political arena, whether we think it is or don't think it is. This is politics. And of all the ones, resumes that I've read regarding this outreach, I consider Walter Sword to be head and shoulders above everybody else in experience and knowledge about the state of Michigan, the government in the state of Michigan. And I also think that down the line, we're going to run out of money and we're going to have to go to the legislature to get more money. And Walter Sword knows everybody over there. And he would be an invaluable resource to assist us in our budgetary talks with the legislature in the future. So I think the same arguments can be made for him that were made for James Lancaster. These people have participated, and with Sword, and both of them, Lancaster and Sword, were both drivers behind us getting to where we are. And I don't think that should disqualify him. I didn't think it should have disqualified Lancaster either, but I certainly don't think it should disqualify Sword from being seriously considered, given his experience and knowledge.
I just think there are other people, Steve, that can do it without the conflict of interest and do it better. Honestly, I would have to sorely disagree. I think Andrea, but when I read all the resumes, her experience soars past everyone in terms of years of experience, in terms of concrete evidence of what she's done, working in different sectors. Yes, she's a reporter, but honestly, for this position, we don't need someone. There's a whole technicality with public relations and community outreach and being able to relate to different communities and being able to hobnob with legislation, with government, and still hold your own, still have a responsibility of assisting and supporting the commission. And, he listed his experience, but it was hard for me when I did research. News media, some things that I'm nitpicking, I want someone to be current. It's actually called digital media. What social media platforms has he managed? Advertising and marketing. I didn't see any experience with buying ads or airtime. It to me is also, like I said, a conflict of interest. There are some other choices. Janet and Edward, I feel like they could do the job, but I honestly feel like there's one candidate that, and this is not, the time where we choose someone, but I think we need to be clear. Again, I keep saying the same thing about what are the markers in which we're choosing people. And if we don't owe anyone anything for helping this commission, and I mean that in the most respectful way possible, we have a job to do that extends beyond how it was started. This is where the serious work begins. And when I think about what it takes to remap and all of the things that we've heard, and what the difference between public relations and community outreach and someone that can simply talk and report, those are two different things. Those are two very, very different things. And I think we need to keep that in mind. And if we're talking about resumes and experience, he's not the only person that's qualified. There are other people, even besides Andrea, I don't know how to pronounce her name, that exceed him, honestly.
Yeah, Andrea has worked in politics pretty much her entire career, working for mayor, a mayor in Cleveland, and currently works for a Democratic congresswoman.
And has experience working with tumultuous topics as well. I literally went to Google and some other resources for each of these folks. And, again, Sue, I think you did a tremendous job. It's unfortunate that we couldn't hear their responses for this rapid fire, but if we're going again off of the resume and what they presented and how they present, even the writing samples, I think there are candidates that just really stand on top.
Dustin.
I just wanted to say that, we look with James Lancaster, we still offered him a interview, and based off of Walter Sword's experience, I would feel that, again, it's not a disqualification. I agree with Steve 100%. And we should at least give him a chance to actually explain and go over what his qualifications are to be the director, because in my eyes, he would be the best fit. and that's mine. I'm willing to look past the political affiliations here with him because it's media related. It's not really anything more than that. So, and that's my opinion.
Doug,
Yeah, I go back to your comment about that we're in a political arena, and that I agree with that. But I think our job as we select these people is to minimize that.
Yep.
Not to eliminate it, but to minimize it, because I don't think we can ever eliminate it from anybody. And my opinion of Walter is that he's on the high end, and I think it's not worth our time to interview him, and I prefer to interview someone else. I think Rhonda was.
Aaron.
I'm comfortable with Sue's recommendations. They were my top 3 picks. I think I had Andrea on as well. But we gave Sue Ann this task to do for us, and we need to be able to stand by what she has to say as our executive director.
Gave the task for the committee to choose, and there's someone in this list that was not on the list too. So that is.
Well, there's nothing that says we can't bring in whoever we want to interview, period.
Exactly.
We could scrap the whole list and send out another request for names, but.
So then that needs to be the standard then. If we can bring whoever, then it should be as a commission that we're making the decision. We respect Sue and she has a job to do for sure, but it is still up to us. And I think we need to stop handing it off, because this happened with the committee that was responsible. They came with a set of names and then someone else was suggested. And then it happened again. And now we're suggesting other people, and it's going back to, well, let's respect Sue. So I'm growing tired of how we make decisions. And if we're thinking about the way we're perceived by the public at all, we need to be more decisive and confident.
Well, I think we have, as a commission, we have the right and the responsibility to listen to everybody. And if the commission chooses to interview more than what whoever recommends, then that's what the commission chooses to do. And that's why we have discussions, and that's why we vote. Rhonda. You have to unmute yourself.
I forgot, sorry. I would like to recommend adding 2 people based off from their resumes. I would like to hear what they say in an interview. The first person is who was highest, I believe, on my list when we went through the initial 6 that were going to be interviewed. And that's Janet Lebson. And I just want to say for the reason she has government experience, not political. She gave an example in her writings of how she has experience dealing with politically controversial policies, and has dealt with that in a setting, a public meeting setting. She's also worked with American Indian tribal governments, along with local and state and federal governments, which, you know, we talk about diversity and this and that. And I go back to a public comment that we had about, there was one specifically about outreach to American Indian tribes, like in the EUP. So I think that could be very beneficial. She has said that she's got experience with print, broadcast media, website content, communicating with government partners, non-government organizations. I also looked at her community service, which the other ones that I looked at that did community service. I mean, she's volunteered at food banks. She's worked as a server as a homeless center. She's provided communication support that helped with issues with affordable housing and food gatherers, which when I look at public service, I think that speaks volumes. Like I said last time about Julianne, I think it speaks volumes about who the person is. And again, I like the example that she gave of a time when she was working in a contentious setting and ended up with the desired outcome, and showed respect to garner the trust of the people that had the issue. The second person that I looked at was Andrea Taylor. She was towards the top of mine. Again, she's got government experience, not political. She's got the community service. One thing that stuck out with her is just a little side thing. She knows Spanish. So going into communities that speak Spanish, that would be very beneficial in communicating with them. The one thing that really stuck out to me is when she talked about public outreach. And there were 3 factors that she brought up, and that's trust, respect, and honesty. And that's how you get the public, you know, to communicate with you. You have to show trust, you have to be respectful, and you have to show honesty. And those words that she used really stood out to me. And I would like to hear more of what she has to say in an interview. So I would like to recommend those 2 people.
Those 2 were who?
Janet and Andrea.
Janet Lepson and Andrea Taylor. I believe we had, did we have 2 Andreas? It's Andrea Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anthony.
So just kind of a point of order. We do have a resolution on the table currently. And, you know, before we decide if we want to add people or not, for whatever reasons they may be, I think we should first decide if we're going to adopt the resolution that we have in front of us, because there does seem to be different opinions on the resolution. So I think we should first vote on this resolution, and then if it doesn't pass, we can talk about how to proceed and if we want to add more people or not. Which, I mean, if it doesn't pass, that's what that's what we'll have to do. That'd be the next step. But this is in front of us, so I think we should consider that first.
I don't think anybody's made a resolution yet. I understand you're talking about this form, but this is simply a form. It hasn't been resolved. You can make the resolution if you want.
Well, I thought we had one in front of us for Bill Froelich, Walter Sorg, and Edward Woods.
Yeah, we have the draft one that Sue had submitted to us.
But that Sue doesn't make resolutions. We make resolutions.
No, exactly. I think that's what he's referencing.
I do too.
That is what I'm referencing.
Do you want to make this the draft resolution as a resolution?
Yes. And then I think after we decide if we want it or not, we can then, you know, we could like take into consideration what those of us who want to add more people have said. Because I mean, just to recap on how we got here, you know,
let me get a second first. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Now we can have discussion. Go ahead, Anthony.
So just to kind of recap how we got here, we first had the subcommittee come up with a list of 6 names that were approved by us to bring in for interview. Now, what then happened was we hired an executive director, and at our last meeting, we tasked them with taking a look at the list and kind of narrowing it down to who they thought would be the best people to bring in for interview. Now, whether we should have done that or not, you know, I don't know who voted. I can't remember off the top of my head who voted for it. I'd have to check the minutes, but we did vote on that, and we did, you know, give her that that task to do, which she has done. As far as the 3 candidates go, I mean, I think all 3 of them are good. I understand the reservations about Mr. Sorg. However, I want to be consistent with, you know, my opinion on this, and it's that I want the best person, and I don't think it should be disqualifying. You know, if we bring them in for an interview and at that point everyone decides that they want to go with someone else, I think that's perfectly fine, and that's how we've done it thus far. But as far as the quality of their applications, I have to agree with what Dustin had said earlier. So that's what I think. And then if we reject this resolution, I think at that point we take a look at the people that you know, Rhonda just said, and we go from there.
Rhonda.
I just have to make a point. When I voted to, and this is nothing, Sue, against you or anything. I appreciate you putting the time in. But when I voted to let Sue, you know, do the pre-interviews, come back with recommendations, it was under the idea that if we didn't agree with the recommendations, we could add people, take people off or whatever. Otherwise, to be honest, I wouldn't have voted for it. I would have said, no, let this commission, you know, interview all of the people, because I would like to have a say. There's obviously people, I had no idea who she's going to pick. I had people in my mind that I believed would do a good job that I wanted to interview prior to. But then it was, you know, let Sue interview and do this. But when we discussed this at our last meeting, it was said that we would be able to add, remove, or not interview any of them.
Well,
So
that's where we're at right now.
Well,
okay.
if we do the resolution though, if we accept it as that for the 3 people, does that then eliminate our, we can't make that choice?
You have a resolution and anybody can make an amendment to add names, take names away, or vote it down.
Why even add that extra step? I don't understand that.
Well, that's the way Robert's Rules of Orders work.
It doesn't have, okay.
I thought I might just hop in
Right now,
it's okay.
Right now, it would appear that Rhonda wants to make an amendment to add Janet and Andrea.
I can second that amendment.
Sally.
Yeah, commissioners, I thought I might jump in with a clarification that I'm sure Mike would jump in and make. He had to step away briefly this hour. So I just wanted to clarify that the sort of drafting of resolutions idea was actually, you know, one that Mike suggested as a way to make sure that whenever you all make a motion and make a decision and move forward, that it's clear to everyone, public, staff, everyone, what's going on. So it's basically the same thing as what you've been doing all along in terms of making a motion and seconding it. But that way we don't have any confusion after the fact about what it was that you all voted on. So I just wanted to quick jump in and make the clarification, because I think if Mike was here, he would make that clarification about the rules of order and about the sort of how a motion works. The resolution is basically a motion, and that's kind of how that came to be. So I hope that's helpful, because I heard a couple procedural questions along those lines.
Well, the resolution is not a resolution until it's given by somebody on this commission and seconded. So you can call it a resolution, you can call it a motion. It's a difference without a distinction as far as I'm concerned. And as it stands right now, the resolution, what it really does, it puts in paperwork form, a format form that's easier to keep track of. And people can, and we can keep track of it by making the changes on paper so we don't get lost in these amendments. So right now, there is a motion on the floor that has been amended, and I'll clarify it by keeping the same 3 names that are on this resolution / motion with Bill, Walter, and Edward amended to add Janet and Andrea. And that's been seconded. So are there other, I mean, the easiest way to go about it, are there other names that we want to interview besides these 5? Anybody raising their hand? Brittany, you had names of people. Do you want people added?
Those were the names, Andrea Taylor.
Okay. She was in the pack. She looked good to me too. Anybody else?
We have 5 now, correct?
We have 5. We have Bill Froelich, Walter Sorg, Edward Woods, the 3rd, Janet. I don't know what her last name is.
Lebson, Janet Lebson.
And Andrea Taylor. Okay, so if you are in favor of the amended motion, which is to interview those 5, and there's no further discussion, raise your hand. Okay, those opposed to the amended motion, 1. The amended motion passes, and that subsumes the original motion. So as it sets right now, We're going to interview 5 people. So if you're looking at your resolution, add Andrea Taylor and Janet
Gibson.
Lipson. Okay. So I guess my next question is, do we have a date to start these interviews without me looking at the calendar? Sue Ann?
If we had had 3, we could have interviewed them at our next meeting. That's only a 2-hour meeting. That certainly isn't adequate. That will push it to Thursday, January 14th, which would be a week from today. If you want to do the interviews, then I don't think we have anything else scheduled on that day, any presenters or anything that we would need to reschedule.
How long is that meeting?
That's a 3-hour meeting. And that's all we have for the rest of the month, are 3-hour meetings. So well, we already have somebody tentatively planned for the 21st of January to come work on.
Well, we would rather get to them sooner than later.
Okay.
So that date was the 23rd, you said?
Thursday, January 14th would be our next 3-hour meeting. And that's in the morning from 9 till noon.
Does that work for everybody? Assuming it works for those people, does that work for
It doesn't work for one of our candidates. I can tell you that. You know, I know I initially asked, initially let them know that our tentative date was Tuesday, the 12th. And if that didn't work out, it would be Thursday, the 14th. So for the interviews. So the other candidates were available on the 14th. So 4 of the 5 would be available.
Cynthia.
Is there any way that we can make the meeting longer on Tuesday?
Sally?
Yes, I think we can do that. So right now it's scheduled to be an evening meeting because we thought we'd try how that works for folks' schedules. So I guess it's a question for all of you in terms of, would you want to, because I think the meeting should probably be scheduled, just doing quick math in my head, for about 4 hours or 3.5 hours at least, right? Sue, do you agree if it's 5 half-hour interviews? And then you all will need time to agree on the questions as well beforehand. So we could start it at 4. I might 4, or we could also extend it later into the evening. I know from the Department of State side, Mike Brady and I have a conflict until 4 or 5 on Tuesday. So, that doesn't have to determine what all of you do, but just as an FYI. So what would be what would work best?
Does anybody have a problem with extending that to start at 4 on that on the 12th?
Yeah.
Cynthia?
My preference would be to do that, to begin it at 4 and be able to do the interviews that day.
I have no schedule conflicts on my extremely packed calendar. Sue?
I'm okay. I work for your pleasure.
So if it starts at 4, everyone, then it would go on until about 7:30, most likely, maybe even 8 o'clock. We probably schedule it from 4 till 8. So does that work?
Okay, January 12th,
Right.
Okay.
4 to 8, and MC brings the pizza. Okay. Right, so on our little form resolution that we now have, if you're keeping track of that, we have a motion, and then we have the attachment, and then we have motion to amend. You would check yes, and you would add added Andrea and Janet.
Oh, and
And-
her name is Andrea, by the way. It's Andrea.
Andrea and Janet. And the motion was, the main motion was by Anthony. And I forget who seconded it.
Rebecca.
And the second, the amendment was by Rhonda. And Brittany, did you second that?
Yes.
And if you followed all that, your forms all filled out. Result was passed. Okay. Draft policy for expenses, Sue.
Okay, so we had a situation last week where Kelly Services asked for a block group of expenses to be approved. That included expenses of mine for payroll. And I didn't know from our motion last month whether I could approve that or whether it would be necessary for Steve to approve mine. And the motion last month seemed to be very unclear. So the minutes recorded is very unclear. So as I was looking at that, I thought maybe we could just start with a draft policy for expenses. And I don't know that this is the end all and be all. We'll probably have to amend it at some point. But this is what I developed, so I can actually reach out and take care of a lot of the day-to-day things. So for example, in this Kelly Services issue, my payroll had already been approved by Steve. So in this block group through this policy, then I could go ahead and approve that since it had been pre-approved by him. But you have had time to review it. I'm happy to answer any questions. I just want to make it as easy as I can for the chair and the vice chair while we're still being transparent and responsible.
That doesn't mean to say that we're going to become untransparent and unresponsible. Doug.
Yeah, I think having Sue approve all the expenses for the commission would be great. But her expenses, I think when you go back and take a look at the Sarbanes-Oxley Act that Congress passed, you don't want the same person approving their own expenses. So we would, I think, continue to have you and Brittany, as we had determined before, to approve Sue's so that we can bypass that situation. That's my comment toward that.
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah.
And that is what is in the policy. But once those are approved, for example, if Kelly Services has a block group that would include me, that has already been approved by Steve, could I then go ahead and approve that? That was.
I would say that would be acceptable.
Okay, and that was what I was trying to explain in the second paragraph. So it was very clear. It was something that they had already approved that piece of it, and I would just approve the block then subsequently.
Any other questions on the resolution / motion, which is in front of you on those? I looked those over. I can tell you the way that it's been working. Sue's been sending, I get her time sheet from Kelly Services Monday or Tuesday, whenever, and I approve 1 hour, like everybody else gets 1 hour. And I also get her, if she submits expenses, I get those either from Kelly or from her, and I approve those. And we also get any other purchases that come through, such as the computers and the phones, etc. So that's what's happening on the ground right now. Seems to be working. I seem to be getting two. I get one from Sue and I get one from Kelly for the same thing. So we do that. Any other discussion? If not, I would appreciate someone making a motion that these be adopted as the directive policy on expenses and approvals.
So moved.
Dustin, and a second.
From Doug. Doug raised his hand.
Doug, okay. All in favor, raise your hand. Thank you. Any opposed, same sign. Passes. All right, just as a thought on this, we're all working from home. I go through about a ream of copy paper a month, printing out. Maybe that'll slow down. I don't know. And I don't know what everybody's doing on expenses, but I haven't seen a lot of expenses come through to be reimbursed. But I certainly would not be opposed if the commission were not opposed that if you're buying copy paper, printer ink, supplies that would normally be available to you in a office setting, that we should be reimbursed for those upon proper submission of receipts. Rhonda.
I personally, you were saying you didn't know what everybody else is doing. I'm keeping my receipts, but because I am an independent contractor, own my own business anyways, I will not be asking for reimbursement. I'll be using anything for this commission as a tax write-off. So.
Well, we thank the IRS on your behalf.
Well, I'm just gonna save the state some money. I'm doing my part.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that from anybody? Yeah, Anthony.
Yeah, I think supplies are pretty easily justifiable, considering, you know, we're in the situation where we have to work from home for the time being.
Okay.
I'm just going to put a
MC.
Sorry, I'm just going to put a shout out to my employer who's actually supporting me and helping me print stuff. So just want to give a shout out to the MSU Student Housing Cooperative.
Better be careful. They find out you're doing that, they'll probably take away your ream of copy paper.
No, my boss is supportive. She's explicitly said so. So that's what I mean. Like she explicitly said.
Well, I think it's not unreasonable, and I think seems to be the gist of the discussion here, that if you're buying lots of extra stuff, that submit a receipt and ask for reimbursement. Okay, next.
Sue has her hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sue.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you want to send those receipts to me, then I can approve them. So submit them, you submit them through your Kelly Services website with the receipts. And actually, you don't even have to send them to me, send them to Kelly. And then they send them to me for approval, and you know, you'll get paid in the week that you submit them.
Now all I gotta do is figure out how to do that.
You have to take a picture. They don't want a JPEG, or I don't think, I'm not sure if a PDF works, but they want a JPEG or some other form. So just take a picture of your receipt and attach it to your report, your expense report with Kelly, and they'll send them to me to approve then.
Very good. New business, draft staff organizational chart.
I have a question first about
Sure.
that.
Who's Cynthia?
Yeah. Was Sue, was the issue ever resolved about reimbursement for things that happened before our December 14th start date?
The issue was resolved as you can't submit any receipts for reimbursement prior to that date. So simply present a receipt for reimbursement now, and you know, it will be covered. So that was what the decision was. It was made. We've paid it out for one commissioner. Just submit it with a Google map, and we'll count your mileage. And it's 57.5 cents per mile, I believe, is the reimbursement rate. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I make the most money. I live the farthest away.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve.
Draft organizational chart. Well, that's pretty easy. You start up here with Sue and you go straight down. We got 3 people. Well, I guess we're on top. Commission's on top. Go ahead, Sue.
I just wanted to acknowledge, I like the line, Sue, between the commission directly to Julianne and also with under you or next to, yeah. So I thought that was significant.
Well, I mean, your general legal counsel is going to have to work very closely with you. So even though she technically is a direct report to me, and we're working on all the things together, she'll be attending meetings, she'll be working on the things that you want her to work on. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. My question was, do you want the same kind of arrow even with the communications and outreach director? Or is that something that can be my responsibility? So I'm open for discussion. And again, like I said earlier, we're all on the same team. We're all going to pull together for the same mission and achieve the same goals. So it's just however you want this to look and how you want to work. But if Julianne or communications are going to be direct reports to you, then that's a different chart.
Doug.
Rhonda had her hand up before
I'm
me.
sorry, Rhonda.
I just had a question for Sue Ann on how that would work as far as with the communications. If they're doing up like a press release or something, do they submit it to you and you give it to us for approval, or are they just kind of out there in the wind? How does it work? I haven't had a communications director, so I'm asking to get an idea of how this works.
Well, according to the contract you gave me, I'm not allowed to submit a press release without your express approval. It's going to be pretty unwieldy. Again, though, if we're having meetings, a couple meetings, 1 or 2 meetings every week, we'll just have to plan well and not have any emergency communications to go out, or have a process in place if there was an emergency communication for, an emergency Zoom meeting, for the chair to be able to approve an interim. We've not really settled how we're going to handle communications, a spokesperson, and those kinds of things. So that is something we need to talk about, definitely.
Okay, because I don't want to feel like there's so much on you and a lot is put on our chair and co-chair, but I don't want it to be like the rest of us, the other 11 people being left out of the loop too. We definitely, I think we all would definitely like to have a say in some things and how it works. So I was just curious how that would work, like press releases, if they have to be approved, every press release approved by the commission itself.
Yeah, that was the only thing in my contract. So I guess I could post on social media every day and do a lot of other things that wouldn't require express approval. So, again, I think it's something we need to talk about.
But one of the things, just as an aside, to kind of keep in mind, Sue and Rhonda and everybody else, is if you're going to have a press release, and you're going to have some method by which to have what would most typically be called an executive committee take a look at it and approve them, it's got to be in an open meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have to come up with something that's not as unwieldy, but I think we need to get the communications and outreach director on board first before we have that discussion.
Yeah, that would be good.
Doug, you had something?
Yeah, this kind of a nit, but would it benefit us to put the commissioners' names on the org chart and specify Steve as the chair and Brittany as the assistant chair?
That's fine with me. I mean, I'm not asking for it. I guess my opinion is that we're all equal. I just happen to be the guy with the baton in my hand, leading you guys, hopefully in some reasonable discussion. So I'm not arguing for that at all. Rhonda.
This might be completely off topic too, but something I thought about with the new year, and I'm not trying to move away from the topic at hand. I'm just, because of the topic at hand. Back in September or October, when we voted for chair and vice chair, we put an expiration date of the 31st of December to see if we were going to continue on with that. So should we not, just for a matter of public thing, get that on the calendar or on the mint, somewhere in there to see if we're going to continue on that way? The motion, yeah, the motion that was put out when we approved it was to do the chair and vice chair till the end of the year, see how it goes, and then we would revisit and reorganize or do whatever. So should that be something that we should look at too and have on the agenda in the future? I just say that because there's a lot of papers being signed, you know, as far as chair, vice chair, this and that. And if there's a change, it could throw up a little bit of a hoo-ha, I think.
Don't worry, I haven't gotten a chance to sign anything yet.
The motion I read was exactly 6 months from the date of selecting the chair. The chair and the structure would be reassessed. That date is March 18th.
Oh, March, okay.
It's on my calendar.
Okay, then I apologize. There might
That's
have-
okay. There was lots of discussion.
Okay,
Yeah.
I apologize, guys.
Yeah, but it is on my calendar.
Doug was first.
I was just going to bring up the same thing Sue brought up.
Okay, MC.
So we're covered, yeah.
And I just wanted to acknowledge, Doug, I think the reason I would suggest that we don't do, that we don't highlight two commissioners on our board, all of us, is I like the idea of the public perception that we are a commission and one united commission. So I think that could be a benefit and yeah.
Okay.
That's why I would suggest not doing that.
Okay, I just brought that up as a
Sure, no, because I think what I think you do very well is also help us delegate, right? And sort of because there's accountability, right? One commission, it's hard to have accountability. So I think that's the dance we're doing, and I think that's what Sue was talking about. We need to have a discussion. So I appreciate the thought. That's why I just wanted to share that
no
piece.
big deal. Okay.
Besides that, if we don't put my name and Brittany's name up there, it makes people harder to find us, to send us nasty emails. Okay, the way that, Sue, you have this set up with a general counsel reporting to you and us, I would think the communications and outreach director would be co-equal with you three. I think that position is going to be extremely important, especially when we get into communities of interest and outreach, etc. So, I mean, that's just my take on it. I don't know that it makes a difference, quite frankly, but MC.
I wonder, I'm thinking about what Rhonda said, which is like, how do the rest of us get involved? And I think there's something in relationship to the organizational chart. There are several of us, I think, who like being more involved. And I think what I'm asking myself is, should we try to have a personnel committee, right? A committee that essentially doesn't make decisions, but is just there for the advisory, not what Steve and Brittany are doing for the commission, but being that, I'm making stuff up, but I feel like in order to have a discussion and in order to get the rest of us involved and to help us feel like we're, it feels like we need to do something that allows for some formation, and I don't know if it needs to be part of the organizational chart. I'm not suggesting that, because I think the idea that like subcommittees, right, are still the commission, right? They're still open board under the Open Board Meetings Act. So I'm not suggesting that we create subcommittees and therefore a deeper organizational chart. We're still the commission, but just have more of us involved. For those people who want to volunteer, those commissioners who want to volunteer to be that emergency response, so you created I was thinking in my head, like, how are we going to do that? And it would be a shame if it was only Brittany and Steve who were only able to help you resolve that. If we had more people involved, that could be a way to do it. But I feel like I'm talking too much, so I'm just going to check. And I see Dustin's hand up.
Dustin.
Yeah, so that in my mind goes right into the field of you're overcomplicating things if we do that. When it comes to things where we would need volunteers to do something, it's just a question that we can ask. And then if people who want to volunteer, they can choose to do so and do things within the subcommittee. There's no real reason to have another committee to assign committees. That doesn't really make much sense in my mind. So I wouldn't reinvent the wheel where it's not needed.
I think that once we get into probably February, when it appears that if we're lucky, census data is going to come out, that we'll have plenty of work for everybody to do. And you may rue the day that you fought that up, MC. But no, I think, as we get more people on board, this is going to expand. I'm sure we're going to hire more than 3 people because there's going to be a lot of work to do pretty soon. Okay. Any other discussion on the organizational chart? It's there as an example to look at, and we'll continue to deal with it as we go. I don't see that this needs to be formalized to in any way right at this stage of the game. Do you?
It certainly doesn't have to be. I just wanted a little bit of discussion around where we are and how we can move forward. And do you want me to draw an arrow just like from Julianne to the commission from the communications person also? Is that what the will of this commission is?
Well,
yes,
that
no.
was kind of my thought. I don't know what everybody else is thinking. Does that sound like a good idea? Yes, no, maybe?
I'm hesitant. I'm hesitant because I feel like we are 13 people, right? And I think if we want to try to act as a commission, right, we make votes, and then we all stand behind votes. What I'm suggesting is our staff, I don't want them to get I don't want to potentially give mixed messages, right? Because we each have a direct line to that person. And so what I'm suggesting is the direct line with Julianne, feels important because of the counsel, right? And I guess what I'm suggesting is as the commission, like she may need to be here with us at these meetings, but no, I don't intend to, right? I feel like if I need something as a staff person, I go to Sue if it's involved, if it's related to something that Julianne might give. But what I'm suggesting is that direct line is only in relationship to meetings. For the future, like I feel like if we go through the executive director, there's a benefit that the staff receives. I know that it sometimes, we each have direct access to those other people, but it's through Sue, and because I feel like there's a buffer there, and I think there's a weight also for you, Sue Ann. So I want to acknowledge that, but it feels like it may be important as we do have a bigger staff and have quick turnaround, like multiple voices in the staff's ear could be problematic.
Let me suggest that we set this onto a future meeting. Get the communications director on board and then give it some more thought. It's nothing that we have to approve today. Quite frankly, it's nothing you can't change down the line anyway. So. Did everyone get the S3 letter? Have a chance to look at it? Anybody have any thoughts about it?
Yeah, I just,
Yeah.
we're talking about the one that did the mapping software.
Right. Redistricting software, training support, independent citizens, redistricting commission.
Yeah, here's my thoughts on it. Eventually, we're going to go out with an RFP so we can evaluate other companies' proposals. If we move forward with this prior to the RFP, we're given an advantage to a certain company. So that's something I think we need to run by our purchasing person. And I really think, I don't really care what he says. I think it's something we should hold back on. Not that it wouldn't benefit us, but it's not fair to the others. And I think what we want to make is an equal playing field for all those that have an interest in the contract. So that was my thoughts toward it, that, it's thanks, but no thanks. We'll deal with it through the RFP.
Mm-hmm.
Because part of the RFP process, and I don't know what the state's process is, but Sue, you may want to jump in on this. Part of the RFP process would be these vendors coming to us and presenting to us what they offer.
Right.
And what the price is and how they're going to do the work. And and if we move forward with this, we're just giving an unfair advantage to somebody, and really we're opening the door for them to complain to the state and some potential legal action against the state, in my mind.
Okay. Anthony, do you have something?
Yeah, so I took a look at it and I completely agree with what Doug said. You know, I'm glad they reached out to us, and I think when it comes time to issue the RFP, they might want to apply. If they're watching this, I'm sure they are. When it comes time to put in that RFP, I hope they apply, and we can then evaluate them and everybody else who applies as well.
Well, they certainly weren't the first. Before we ever had a meeting, I got one from somebody. So I don't disagree. I mean, but it was intriguing that at least they reached out and they said, hey, we're willing to come in and talk to you and tell you what we got. You're right, Doug. The others will be there too.
Yeah.
And we need to start looking. We need to start looking at those places.
I'm sorry. Sue met with the purchasing agent. I believe you've talked to him. And
Yes, we
yeah,
met with
a lot of the things he's going to do is take our statement of work of what we're looking for, and then he's going to wrap all these terms and conditions around it to protect the state. So it's maybe you can expound on that a little more, Sue.
Well, your 3-page document ended up as a 44-page draft.
Yeah.
But what's most important for us is to get the scope of work that we want very clear and very detailed. So we get exactly what we're asking for. So that's our job, is to make sure that we're asking for what we really need.
Correct. And then he wraps all these terms and conditions, like how they get paid, what happens if they default, all that other legal garbage.
And Rebecca said to make sure to put in there a clause that if we get sued, they don't get paid. All right. Schedule an agenda for January meetings.
Okay, hey, Steve, can we back up for a second?
We sure can.
Talk this letter that came from this company. I think somebody should give them feedback somehow in a letter or whatever, and explain to them that, thank them and explain to them that we'll deal with it through the RFP process.
Sue?
I will be happy to do that.
Okay. Yeah, just to have the
sure
closed loop on the feed on the whole conversation. Okay, thanks.
Yep. All right, so we have upcoming meetings on the 12th, the 14th, 21st, and the 28th, and the 30th. Does everybody agree with that? The 12th, we are interviewing, so that takes care of the 12th. The 14th, Sue, did you say we had something set on the 14th already?
I don't believe we do, but we are in conversations this week and next with several different groups. So we've got some people we're talking to about communities of interest. We want to talk a lot about the mapping software and what the specifications are that we're going to need for that. So we've got a lot to think about. Also, our budget, we don't have an adopted budget as a commission. We probably want to look at that. And I've reached out to the appropriate people at DTMB and asked them what we've spent so far. I can play, like I've only been around a month, so I don't know what was spent ahead of me. So I asked for a comprehensive report so I can wrap my arms around what is being spent, what needs to be spent. And again, our budget is much less than what was planned when the Constitution was changed. So we may have to seek additional resources from the legislature or outside sources. So we really need to get these RFPs out, figure out what our consultants are going to cost. And it's going to be a big part of the cost. And then go forward from there.
Have you, talking about budgets, have you given any thought as to what kind of staff that you think we're going to need?
No, I have not. I really need to look into what have we spent? What are we spending? What are our fixed costs? And then again, the estimates are pretty high. I don't know for some of these consultants, they're pretty big expenses.
Well, they only do it once every 10 years, so they got to make.
Right.
Okay, what about going further ahead, 21, 28, and 30? Same thing, we're looking at filling those in, or do we have specifics right now?
On the 21st, I believe Rob Serber is going to come back and talk to us about mapping and mapping software and specifications and,
Okay.
and you know, in that regard. So I think he's on board for that. And again, we really need to look at some strategic planning and, or at least a calendar planning of what needs to be done by when, so we can meet all these deadlines that are ahead of us. They're going to come pretty quickly.
Probably be a good idea when, if you're going to sit down and do that, to ship a calendar out to everybody, a master calendar with those specific dates. I mean, we know November 1st is there, but obviously you got to back down before then.
You're back to September 17th for that
Yeah.
45-day period.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll be here before we know it.
Yeah, I think in one of the meetings in January, we want to address the RFPs. And my suggestion on that, I think, as I recall, I had put together a draft of 3 separate ones, and we maybe need a 4th or a 5th. I'm not sure. But I would suggest that maybe we deal with committees for each one of them. And then the committees can define the statement of work and bring it back to the commission. That's the conversation I'd like to have in one of the meetings, if that's the approach we want to take.
We can do that.
Okay.
Sue will put that on an agenda item for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think the sooner the better on this, because this whole
Yes.
RFP process is very time consuming.
Well, the other thing that's going to sneak up on us in a hurry is these community meetings all over the state. And I think, I mean, I guess it's my opinion, and maybe, I don't know if Mike is back or not, but I think those are we're gonna have to figure out how to do those in person somehow. So.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't see us reasonably saying, I'll just pick Hamtramck because everybody picks on Hamtramck, that, you know, we're gonna do Hamtramck by Zoom totally. So we got to figure that one out. Cynthia had her hand up, and then Anthony.
Then MC also.
I would just be interested to know, as things stand right now, how long are we approved or mandated to have Zoom meetings, have our meetings virtually? When does that end as of right now?
Probably got that, or Sue is. I thought it was through March.
Through March.
Through March.
Everyone, sorry, just wanted to quick jump in on that. I looked it up just to verify. And Mike just texted, he's back, by the way. But it's March 30th.
Yeah, I thought I was right on that. Thank you for agreeing, Mike. MC and Anthony. I picked Anthony first. So MC, you've talked a lot today. Anthony.
Yeah, so I agree. We definitely need to start thinking about like what those meetings are going to look like. Hopefully things get better in the next couple months, but in case they don't, it's something we should start thinking about. The Constitution does say we have to have those meetings, and I'm not sure if doing them over Zoom counts as having them, you know, across the state in communities of interest. So that's something we should look at. And kind of to help us, we MC mentioned this earlier. We did get that correspondence from Thomas Avaco of Close Up that had, you know, a really good detailed 25-page report attached to it that goes over, you know, some stuff about communities of interest that I recommend each one of us reads. They were having a webinar about it on January 27th. I believe that's being rescheduled. So I don't know if we want to have him in again sometime in January or not, or perhaps February, but we should at least read that report that was attached to it.
Sally.
Just quickly on that point, Anthony, I reached out to see what the format of the webinar is, because as you all know, you have strict guidelines around what kinds of things you can actually attend. If it's an educational thing that you're just watching, that's kind of a different story. And so he did describe that it will likely be a webinar where members of the public can just watch. I think some people can participate, by submitting questions in writing, but I'm sure Julianne will have more to say on this, but I think that's the kind of thing that you probably would be able to still watch and do, because you can do whatever you'd like on your own time as long as you're not discussing. And then also the point you raised, he mentioned that it would be pushed back until February, and they're hoping that there will be more information by February. And I think other organizations as well on how you all will want to collect communities of interest and other and other submissions from the public, so that they can help inform the public further. So I think it just sort of underscores that, State of Michigan is certainly watching all of you and excited to hear how they can participate. So it's really exciting, but just wanted to affirm that yes, it is delayed, and it's likely something you all will be able to watch.
Anthony, did we get a copy of that 25-page report you're talking about, or is it available somewhere?
Yeah, in his correspondence, he has a PDF, and there's a hyperlink inside of the PDF that links to the full report.
Can you send that to me, the hyperlink?
And I would just also note, I believe that same report, as well as other reports, were included in your binder of materials, that same link, back in September. So it should be the same, but I'm, just wanted to note for all of you guys, if you've read that, you've read it.
Okay. MC.
I just want to acknowledge Sarah Reinhardt. Thank you. She posted in the link, Steve, for the close-up report that Anthony mentioned, and everything has been said that I wanted to say. So thank you all.
Mike Brady. There you are. Question.
Good afternoon.
What are we under the same restrictions having these community meetings as having our commission meetings? And the reason I ask that, we don't have in-person meetings in the community until after the end of March. We are going to have a big problem.
Yes, good afternoon. Happy New Year. I appreciate the question. I believe there are 15 meetings that are referenced. I think 10 of them are referenced in subsection 8. And the language there, again, just to ground ourselves in the constitutional language, and as a refresher for folks watching at home, other than all of us watching at home. So it says, before commissioners draft any plan, the commission shall hold at least 10 public hearings throughout the state for the purpose of informing the public about the redistricting process. So I think there's certainly a lot of very good reasons why I think some of you have spoken about already, the value of having meetings that are actually out in person in the public, to expand who's able to access the meeting and whatnot. As I think Anthony noted, regardless of whether you have a meeting in person or whether you are or whether you're doing it virtually, there's an obligation in the Constitution to record and to broadcast the meeting you have. So if there was no COVID, and you were definitely, if we were in person today, there's no COVID in an alternative world, and then you're planning your 10 meetings before coming up with a map and a plan, those would all have to have cameras there. That's something the Department of State's assisted with before. I'm sure we'd be able to assist with that again. And then that would have to be broadcast because that's a specific requirement in the Constitution. So I say that to say, no matter what, you've got to broadcast, you've got to have a virtual, not exactly option for people to engage, but an option for people to observe and to take in what you're doing at those meetings. So that's first and foremost right there in the Constitution. This other question in terms of, are we allowed to have a meeting that's in person? Yes, you can. Even right now, if you wanted to, the law that was enacted by the legislature and signed by the governor gives public bodies, this is again in the Open Meetings Act, it gives public bodies the choice, the ability to have an open meeting consistent with the Open Meetings Act requirements virtually. It does not mandate that people do it virtually. I think most public bodies are for obvious reasons, but it's not a mandate, it's a choice. That under the current legislation, which again is the second time this has been, put out there, that goes until March 30th, as Steve has already noted. Might it be extended again? It might be. It might not be. I have no idea. And I think, it's right. It's a good idea for this commission to be mindful and to be ready for whatever might happen, whether it is extended again or whether it's not extended again. So if, I think, I'm looking at, again, Section 8 and just that question of 10 public hearings. And so it might become the question of like, what's a public hearing? And in the time of COVID, right now, is this a public hearing? Like, I don't know. I certainly appreciate, and I have already reached out to Julianne, and we're connecting next week to talk about this and so many other things. I know Sue's been in contact with Julianne as well. So I think ultimately there'll be some questions there that I'm reluctant to kind of shoot from the hip on right now and say, I think to one of the questions that was put to me, whether or not a virtual meeting could satisfy the requirement to have 10 public hearings throughout the state for the purpose of informing the public about, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think we have to answer that question today. I'm certainly not going to answer the question today. I'm not actually your lawyer, but I have thoughts on it. I think, at the very least, just to say, you're right to be thinking about that. You're right to be planning for it either way. That is to say, even if the law, the Open Meetings Act law is changed to allow you to continue to meet virtually, some of you, I've already heard you kind of offer that there are other rationale for why you might want to meet in person and then stream it and broadcast it virtually as required by the Constitution. If you're not allowed to, then it'll simplify that from the Open Meetings Act requirement, because again, you have the two layered obligations, one being the Open Meetings Act, the other being the Constitution. There's a lot going on there. I hope that's helpful. Rhonda, I'm looking at you to see if that makes sense. Other folks, okay. If anyone has questions there. Okay. Sorry, it's not super straightforward, but as you, maybe aren't surprised just with, once again, this being the inaugural commission, a lot of the stuff isn't, super straightforward.
I guess I think it's straightforward. If we decide we want to have an in-person open meeting, we can do that. The question then becomes of the
that is correct.
Of the people of us, the commission. I guess the question is, how comfortable are each individual participating in an open meeting? We did have one open meeting and it was spread out and worked fine. So I think that's something that that I would like everybody to think about, and we'll discuss it further in the next one or two meetings, number one. And number two, my next question to Mike is, I don't think the whole commission, I don't read in the amendment that the whole commission has to be at that community meeting. Now, maybe I should ask Julianne that, if she's listening. Julianne, there's your first question after you sign your contract.
Yeah, I'm sure she's watching right now. Hello, Julianne. And, she'll certainly have, opinions about this. For whatever it's worth, so what I'm looking at when it says the commission shall hold at least 10 public hearings, and then, I don't know, that strikes me as, at least at this moment, and again, I certainly appreciate her wise legal counsel, and we'll get, other perspectives as well. the idea of splicing a public hearing for the commission from the other definition of a public meeting for the commission and demands for quorum. You're absolutely right. It doesn't need to be all 13. It never needs to be all 13. But the idea that, you know, one or two of you or some sub-quorum number could go out and, you know, hear from the community, but who's hearing from the community? Not the commission. The commission, it doesn't exist until there are 9 of you present. So I think that is, I think it's a step too far. But again, I'm not your lawyer, and Julianne will certainly, you know, is watching this, and will have an opportunity to weigh in and provide you the sound legal counsel that that you deserve. Steve, to your question, I guess I'd clarify. If you want to have a meeting in person, the law allows you to do that, and if you can get your quorum there, then I think that is direct. What I think is less direct is if you don't want to have a meeting in person, you want to do it virtually, then depending on whether this is happening before March 30th or after March 30th, I think that's a little less direct. And that would be a distinct question that you could put to Julianne if this commission ultimately decides to attempt to satisfy these 10 hearings, these 10 public hearings in a virtual way.
But I don't think we have to have a quorum at the 10 meetings, because I don't anticipate that we're making decisions at those meetings. We're hearing from the community to determine what potential communities of interest there are out there.
So the idea of whether making decisions or deliberating, which includes discussion, that would be something that is an obligation under the Open Meetings Act. The reference for these 10 public hearings is something that exists in the Constitution, and the definition of quorum for this commission being 9 and then being made up of a certain way, that's defined in the Constitution, not in the Open Meetings Act. So again, not going to shoot from the hip, not your lawyer. Appreciate the question. We'll definitely add it to the list of things that I'll be going over with Julianne, and I think these are all good questions for you to be raising. But I do think separately, the idea that some sub-quorum group, I'm just speaking, I suppose, if possible, you know, as a citizen, the idea that I can show up at the one in my neighborhood and talk about my community of interest, and that, you know, only 3 of you are going to be there.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm not sure that feels like the intent of the voters here, but that's just one citizen's perspective.
The side A of that record, or side B of that record, is we can do more, we can accomplish more meetings with fewer people out and about.
But 10 has always been a minimum and not a maximum. 10 is a floor, it's not a ceiling. And frankly, as big as the state is, you know, you should aim for more than 10 anyways, just because, you know, we're Michigan. You guys, you know, we all deserve that, and that's a good thing.
I don't disagree.
But the citizens perhaps saying too much.
So yeah, Michigan's a big state, and Iron Mountain's a hell of a long way away. At any rate, think it over. And I'm sure our general counsel, once she signs for a contract, will have an enlightened on this very interesting question.
No doubt.
Okay. Any other?
Sally,
We're at the end of the.
I have something, but Sally has a hand up.
Sure.
I was just going to mention on that last point, I think you all might enjoy looking at how the California Commission back in 2011 handled some of these things. They had, I think, some 30 something, if you all recall, when they talked about meetings, and some of those were them attending other meetings in pairs that were politically balanced, so that they could reach even more than what their minimum was. And so, Steve, to your point, maybe that's a way to think about it as well, is how to go even, you know, far beyond with the capacity that you all have.
Well, the other problem, the other thing that they had is they were able to have subcommittees less than quorums, and they didn't make decisions. They were a little looser than what we're able to be. But Brittany, did you have something?
Yeah, it's not related to the discussion. It's kind of like a final thought. I was just thinking of our discussions when it comes to hiring and conflict of interest. So I honestly wanted to pose it to Mike or Sally, and maybe create a moment next meeting to figure out who fact checks in terms of what is constituted as a conflict of interest and who is in charge of like our ethics, because it's not outlined in the Constitution and this has come up. And I think as we move forward, that's something that we need to be clear on. And if we decide to move in any direction, that's fine, but I would like there to be a clear understanding so that we don't have to have these polite and professional tiffs. We can move and hire folks in the vein that they should be. So that is my thought. I don't know if Mike or Sally, you have anything to say. I know folks probably want to take advantage of us being done before 4, and I know this is not a conversation that can take place in the remaining our remaining time, but I do think it's worth the discussion.
We got time. You want to discuss it right now? We're open for it.
Yeah, I don't have the answer. It would have to come from either like a Julianne or Mike Brady or Sally March, who worked so hard for us already.
Sally.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, absolutely happy to touch on some of those questions now. I'm sure also Sue has thoughts on that. But I think what Mike and I could certainly do is provide provide perspective on how issues of sort of personal versus private lives and conflict of interest are handled throughout state government. Since I know all of you are in some capacity new to this kind of world, so we can provide perspective on that and kind of how those ethical guidelines are treated in other departments, other areas of the government, and also offer our opinion. I'm sure also that Sue and Julianne have thoughts along these lines as well in terms of how you can be objective in what you all are thinking of. I'd also mention that you all did vote on a code of conduct as well. So would be happy to talk about all of these things, especially at the next meeting, but certainly today too. We're happy to talk about it and provide our thoughts and opinion.
I will say that, Brittany, that without having a formalized plan of looking at social media, looking at donation records, etc., I think the commission's done a pretty good job. I mean, people have taken that role on, Rhonda being one. She would be the chairperson of that subcommittee. That we've gotten this worked out somewhat. I understand, a desire to maybe formalize it, but also consider that we probably just on the verge of making the 3 major hires that we're going to do, and the rest are going to come below that probably won't be as controversial as these 3. So I would think that in the future, maybe that will be a less of interest than they have been for these 3 hires, which are obviously the major players that we're going to be dealing with and the public's going to be dealing with.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to me. It's an elephant in the room. We've had 2 folks that had a close tie to how the commission was formed. So my question specifically is that okay? And I want an informed answer. So if Mike, Sally, you have some guidance on that would be great. Is it, do you all typically hire folks that are closely tied to the way departments are formed, run, designed, etc.? Because I think that's something, and I could be on an island by myself and that is fine, I'm brave. I think that's something that we need to think closely about rather than continue to offer spaces for folks that could specifically and more poignantly be eliminated right off the bat because it is a conflict of interest.
I think that's a reasonable question, and so when whoever's sending that contract to Julianne, include that question with it. Anything else? I don't have anything more. Dustin.
I have a quick question. I keep getting text messages from Kelly Services saying that we're eligible for benefits. So this is a question on if it's going to incur any other costs to us, because my understanding was we didn't have benefits.
Sue,
Sue Ann is shaking her head vigorously and not in an up and down motion.
We do not have benefits. None of us have benefits. Those are being sent out in error and they apologize, but I don't know. There's something automatic in the system that keeps generating those. So no employees or commissioners are eligible for benefits from Kelly Services. Also, I wanted to mention on Julianne, she was part of the Ethics Commission for the City of Detroit. So I'm sure she has some good resources there.
Okay, thank you.
Man, I was looking forward to some whole life insurance, but oh well.
You get to do three things, Dustin. You get to send in your hour every week. You get to get your check every week. And you get to send in an expense report every now and then. That's it. Rebecca, you were waving your hand there for a second.
I was just going to say I reached out to them because I specifically asked that question, do we have benefits? Because I wanted to know if we had 401k options available, and I was told no. And then the next day I was getting these emails about benefits. I'm like, they just told me no. Like, what is this?
But once they sign you up, the computer's going to send you everything they got. Easy as that. Doesn't mean you can't put them in your IRA. Anything else? Yeah, Anthony.
So I have a little something. We all, and I don't mean this to be, I don't want this to be a political, if you will, speech. As you all know, I'm one of the independents on this commission, but I couldn't help but think about, all 13 of you yesterday while I was watching the news pretty much all day. And, I was saddened by what happened yesterday in our country. And I think it really kind of hit home for the type of work that we're doing. And I hope the people of Michigan know that, and I think I speak for all 13 of us and Sue when I say this, but we are all working to make sure this is a free and fair process, so that our state can continue to have free and fair elections. And yesterday just hit me kind of hard. So I just want y'all to know I was thinking about you yesterday.
Same, Anthony, which is why my brain is turning in what's right constantly. How are we being representative? How are we being fair?
Well, fortunately for us, there's a couple of things. Number one, everything we do is broadcast on YouTube, put in the archives, and transcripts are made. And secondly, we're not using voting machines. Sometimes you catch a break, This is called community building here, folks. Anybody else? Aaron, you've been quiet. What do you got for us?
Nothing to say.
Juanita, haven't heard from you today. You're muted.
Something. Oh, Rebecca has her hand raised after Juanita speaks.
No, I was just saying that I'm taking it all in, and that's all. Just taking it in and listening so I can kind of captivate everything everyone is saying.
Who is it? Brittany, who'd you say?
Rebecca.
Rebecca.
And then Doug.
Yeah, I was just going to say, reflecting on yesterday, this is something my husband, who's very much a private person and in some ways is not thrilled that I am on the commission because of that. We've had a lot of discussions about this, and I think even if we are fair and transparent, the unfortunate reality of being in a very public position means that we will be potentially subject to criticism, possibly protests, possibly whatever that might be. And so I just think for us as a family, that's something we've thought about carefully and have taken additional precautions to make sure that we are safe in the event something does go wrong, because you can behave in a completely upright and fair manner and still have someone think you've done something wrong and show up at your front porch screaming at your kids while you're in a committee meeting. So I just think it's something to be mindful of. We're unfortunately in a very divided political time, and I think that's really unfortunate. And you know, it's just something that weighs heavily on my mind.
Thank you. I think it probably weighs it on everybody's mind, especially after yesterday. Janice, what do you got for us?
Don't forget about Doug, Steve.
I'm good. I really don't have anything to say right now. Like Juanita, I've just been listening and trying to process everything. So it's got nothing.
Would you say Brittany, MC?
No, Doug.
Yeah, I just wanted to compliment our little group that did the hiring for the general counsel. I think they did a very good job, and I think it's representative of the work that we do as a group. So thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. I agree.
I agree with the people that have worked on these subcommittees have done yeoman's person service. So who have I missed? Richard. Richard, we haven't heard. You're here. You're in all your splendor and glory on TV.
Yeah, I just kind of been sitting back listening and trying to take it all in also. I finally did get on. I threatened it with a hammer, so it let me on finally.
Well, obviously, you're going to get one of the first computers. So
I hope so, because
that takes care of that.
It just wouldn't let me sign on. I don't know. I don't think it's a computer. It must have been just a link. I'm not sure. Don't know.
Well, you heard the talk about their password. They probably kicked your password off.
And I wondered, I played around, did a couple different things. Finally, it came on. Sally, I think, had talked to me, or Sarah had talked to me about it and said that it had to do with sometimes you just got to let it work and then you'll log on. And I just let it sit there and finally it did. So.
Yeah, it's not. I found I do a lot of Zoom meetings, not just with this group. I do a lot of other Zoom meetings, and sometimes you gotta let it do its thing for a while.
Okay.
Rhonda.
2 or 3 times.
You just made me think of that. Since Sally said she thinks they can get 10 computers right away, and obviously Sue and Julianne would need one, can we just maybe pick out the other commissioners that might need one right away? Like you said, Richard, I know Juanita has had issues with her computer a lot too, and kind of give that list to them so they know once those come in, okay, here they're going to, because I'll wait on mine. I have no problem waiting on mine.
Yeah, I think we can work on doing that. Yeah, I mean, that was 3 are going out right away, obviously, to the executive director, the attorney, and the communications person. They're going to get them.
Right, but since we have an hour left of time, can we just like maybe pick out some of them commissioners that need them more than others? So Sally has a list of top priorities, maybe?
Well, Sue will get the list now.
Or yes, Sue, I'm sorry. I'm still getting used to it, Sue.
Certainly Richard would be one. Who else is?
Juanita.
Juanita, you've had some issues with your computer.
All the time.
So Juanita would be another one. Who else? Who else wants one?
Dustin.
Dustin, okay. That's 3.
I'll put my hat in the ring. I can wait. I need to separate. I need to separate things that are going on for my sanity.
Is this your home or your background, Brittany?
This is my home today.
That looks nice.
Snazzy, thank you.
Okay, so that's 4. And that's 3, 7. We got 3 left. Who wants one? Rebecca. 2 left.
Janice.
1 left. Come on, speak up.
Well, I'll take one if there's an extra, but I'm not in a hurry.
All right, well, we'll see. Maybe somebody will crash before we get them. So we got 1 spare that we'll deal with when we get them. Hopefully we'll get them all at the same time. Who knows? Mine seems to be working fine. And like I said, I use them on all kinds of other Zoom meetings. So, all right. Anything else? I see we, like you, like everybody else, you couldn't help but watch what was going on yesterday in Washington. And since that was all that was on TV, unless you went to Roku. And it's some of the, I guess my comments are somewhat on, some of the comments you heard was, how could these people get through, and where were the police, and nobody expected this. And I'm sitting there thinking, you didn't expect this? You have thousands of people coming into DC for the express purpose of objecting to the count, and you didn't expect there to be trouble, and you don't have enough security there. Some heads are gonna roll. You watch, some heads are gonna roll from the security.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for those police officers who were there, who were very much not having adequate resources to defend themselves, and had to retreat, and they should have, so that they would not have been more badly injured. It was a very unfortunate position for them to be put in. They never should have been put in that position in the first place. They should have had more people there to help. And
this gal that got shot, a 14-year Air Force veteran, I guess.
Yeah.
By a Capitol police officer. That is so tragic on so many levels, because she's, well, fortunately and unfortunately, she's the only one that got shot. And then you got, how many hundreds of people storming the Capitol anyway?
Yep.
That just makes no sense to me. But then there's a lot of things that don't make any sense to me.
Well, it certainly doesn't accomplish anything, because at the end of the day, they didn't really stop anything. So it's just unfortunate.
Are we done?
I think so.
Motion.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded by?
I second it.
All in favor, shut your computers off, and we'll see you on the 12th. It's been wonderful, people. Thank you for your, thank you. Thank you, staff.
Have a good afternoon.